Beyond the buzzer, inside the game, this is Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Another great show here on this Tuesday. Glad you're with us on the Sports IQ. Austin Nivison joining us from CBS Sports. The NHL trade deadline is come and gone, and producer Tony catching up with him to discuss that. Also, Tony also talking with Josh Buckhalter back on the show. NFL free agency is here, and let the checks begin flying, right? We'll talk about that here coming up in a couple of minutes. Let's get to some quick headlines for you. Speaking of NFL, the Dolphins, we talked yesterday, waving bye-bye to Tua. They say hello to Malik Willis. 3 years, $67.5 million deal, $45 million guaranteed. Now, Miami's new head coach, Jeff Hafley, was the defensive coordinator in Green Bay the past 2 years. That's where Malik Willis went. Remember, he was a third-round pick of the Tennessee Titans. Didn't go well there. He was then shipped to the Green Bay Packers, where he only had just a handful of starts. But boy, he turned that into the latest, reclamation project. We see this all the time in the NFL where quarterbacks go elsewhere, and now he will be QB1 down in Miami, replacing Tua. Speaking of Tagovailoa, he will go to the Falcons, it appears. 1 year deal, $13 million. Atlanta, rare two lefties at quarterback, Tua and then Michael Penix Jr., who is entering his third season, but again, injury problems, which he struggled through all the way through college at Indiana and Washington. But Tua will get a chance to rebuild his name with a 1 year deal there in Atlanta with that new management there. Let's turn now to the NCAA tournament. Selection Sunday is coming up on Sunday. 2 more automatic bids punched on Monday. Troy is the Sun Belt champion. Furman takes the SoCon. Tuesday night coming up tonight, there are 3 more bids that are up for grabs. In the CAA, the Colonial, it is Monmouth taking on Hofstra, Horizon, Wright State, and Detroit Mercy. And then it will be Santa Clara in the West Coast Conference trying to take down 12th-ranked Gonzaga, the Bulldogs. Their final year in the West Coast Conference before moving to the newly populated, if you will, Pac-12 conference. That's coming up. By the way, major conference conferences, those tournaments also beginning today. ACC with 3 games, the Big Ten 2 games. 4 games in the Big 12. They're in Kansas City. The ACC and the Big 12, of course, they will crown their champion on Saturday. The Big 10, with 18 teams, they've expanded now. It's going to actually last 6 days. They won't end up with a champion until Sunday afternoon. The final game played there on CBS, as it always is every year, right before the Selection Sunday show. We've talked before about how this week is the crazy one to try to cover this tournament. 38 games on Wednesday alone. Tomorrow, including 7th-ranked Iowa State in action over in the Big 12 and 24th-ranked Louisville in the ACC. Speaking of college basketball, new AP Top 25 is out. Duke number 1 for a record 150th time. In case you're wondering, UCLA is second all-time, 134 times. They've been number 1. Kentucky is third with 125. Duke, remember, without starters Patrick Ngamba and Caleb Foster for the ACC. We will see if they come back for the NCAA tournament. We would like to see them there. The top 10 as it is right now this week, the final top 10 before Selection Sunday, before the tournament. Duke, Arizona, Michigan, Florida, and Houston, the top 5. UConn falls to 6. Then Iowa State, Michigan State, Illinois, and Virginia is at number 10. Okay, producer Tony as our first guest.
Well, thanks so much, Larry. And, obviously basketball takes so much of the stage this time of year, especially college basketball with the girls, the guys, everything going on. But last week was an interesting deadline in the National Hockey League with the trade deadline happening on Friday. We're lucky enough to have our good friend Austin Nivison back with us, the CBSSports.com hockey writer. Austin, thanks so much for taking some time and joining us today.
Thank you. Good to be here and good to talk trade deadline and get ready for the last stretch run here in the NHL.
Yeah, we're down to about the less than 20 games left in the regular season for everybody. So it's going to be an interesting time. And the trade deadline was interesting. There really weren't, as compared to like the last couple of years, not a lot of huge names trading teams this time around.
No, the names that got dealt, the big names that got dealt, kind of got dealt earlier in the season. Obviously, Quinn Hughes in December. You had Rasmus Anderson before, I think before the Olympic break, and certainly Artemi Panarin was right before the Olympic break. So you had a bunch of these names that got dealt, that it was before the deadline. And then when the deadline came, it seemed like a lot of these teams, basically the contenders seemed to think that the prices that the sellers were asking were too high. So, um, we kind of wound up being a bit of a dud, but we did see, I think we did see some subtle, kind of more under the radar stuff though that'll make a difference.
Yeah, there were some smaller moves made, difference makers, hopefully, for some of these teams. Who do you think scored pretty good in the wheeling and dealings that led up to Friday, then that last week of the trading period?
Yeah, two teams I think that stand out in terms of adding players would be the Utah Mammoth. There on Thursday, they got Mackenzie Weegar from the Flames, and they did so without giving up a first round pick or a top prospect. And I think Mackenzie Weegar is an excellent top four defenseman. I think he moves the puck well. I think he skates well. I think he fits what the Mammoth like to do very well. They're a young team. They're fast. They play kind of an attacking style. They're a very fun team to watch, and I think Mackenzie Weegar fits that and gives them some very good depth there on the blue line. And then the other team is obviously the Avalanche. They reacquired Nazem Kadri. I mean, right at the deadline, like just under the wire. And that's a guy that's going to give them now, if they want to. I know he played on McKinnon's line yesterday, but if they wanted to, they could go McKinnon, first line center, Brock Nelson, who's now an Olympic gold medalist, second line center, Nazem Kadri, third line center, and then the newly acquired Nick Roy as the fourth line center. So that's center depth that no other team can match, and that's something that's very, very important in the playoffs. So I think the Mammoth and the Avs really bolstered their teams, and now they kind of stand out among some of those other contenders in the West.
As you saw the trade deadline unfold, were you surprised that teams that are underperforming this year didn't try to do more to unload some pieces that they were going to lose? Teams like Toronto and Florida come to mind in those kind of teams.
Yeah, I was a little. There were some rumblings that Sergei Bobrovsky was going to get moved by the Panthers, and I think that would have been an interesting deal. He's on an expiring deal. I don't. He's had one of the worst seasons of his career this year. Um, they're apparently working to re-sign him. I would love to know what those numbers look like, because I don't know that I would want to give an older goalie coming off the worst season of his career big money. So he may be taking a discount to stay. Who knows? But I thought he was a guy that could have been moved. They could have kind of restocked the coffers a little bit so that they could, in the offseason, the Panthers, that is, then flip some of that draft capital and try to go for another run here when they're healthier in 26, 27. The Maple Leafs are a tough situation. They did trade Bobby McMahon and Nick Roy, and I think they got good value for both of those players. I think they have big decisions to make in the offseason, and I think it's fair to wonder whether current GM Brad Treliving will be the one making those decisions.
So that'll be the next wave, is when we get to the end of the season and coaches and GMs wind up going. It's been so disappointing for Toronto not to be able to get over the hump the last few years, and this year it's really looking like they're not even going to get a chance to get to the playoffs to get over that hump the way things are looking right now.
Yeah, they've really cratered this year. I think the loss of Mitch Marner was pretty big. I know they probably don't want to hear about that anymore in Toronto, but I do think that's obviously had an impact, because they were a top-heavy team without as much depth. And you take one of the pieces out of the top of that lineup, one of the stars away, and they didn't improve the depth that much. So now the star power at the top is a little less, but your depth wasn't really improved. That's a problem. They have an older blue line that I think you've seen some guys. Chris Tanev has battled injury. Some other guys have taken a step back, and that's been a factor as well. And I don't know that Craig Berube is the right coach for that group at the moment. So that's another move we'll have to look for maybe in the offseason.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time once the regular season ends. And on the reverse end of things, we're seeing some teams who, you didn't expect to be in the running, didn't expect to be playing. I mean, if you went into the end of September and your bingo card had Buffalo Sabres leading their division on March the 9th, you might have had somebody coming to visit you that had a big white jacket to take you somewhere.
Yes, exactly. The Sabres have been incredible. They're on a magical run, and it extends even beyond the Sabres. I mean, think about the teams that are probably going to miss the playoffs. You've got the traditional powers. You've got the Panthers probably going to miss. The New Jersey Devils, a team people expect a lot out of, probably going to miss. Rangers going to miss. You've got the Bruins kind of there on the fringes, but you've got these other teams. The Red Wings are up there this year. The Sabres are up there. You have a bunch of teams in the Penguins who I didn't expect much out of personally this year. They're in there too. So it's an interesting year, but the Sabres in particular, yes, they're an amazing story. That roster has finally started to come together. Oddly enough, the roster that Kevin Adams built and then was fired about a month before everything started to come together, which is kind of probably a little, unfortunate for him. But I mean, overall, yeah, it's Tage Thompson is so much fun to watch. Obviously, Rasmus Dahlin is one of the best defensemen in the world, and the Sabres are getting amazing goaltending. That's one of the biggest differences for this team this year. Is Alex Lyon has been outstanding, and even Luukkonen, when he's been in there and healthy, has been very good as well. So you're seeing a team that's finally, I think they have a lot of younger pieces that are starting to hit their stride, and they've been a lot of fun to watch. I don't know, do they have enough to get past some of maybe the Tampa Bay Lightning and Carolina Hurricanes? I guess we'll see. So.
Yeah, are you a little bit surprised at the Lightning this year being able to come back and rejuvenate themselves and get back into the thick of a Stanley Cup run right now, which is where they're at?
Yes, I mean, I every year it's like, okay, this team's a little older. Are they going to be able to keep this going? And sure enough, they do every year. I think John Cooper is the best coach in the NHL. Obviously, helps that Nikita Kucherov is one of the top 5 player, top 10 player in the league. Andrei Vasilevsky is playing at a Vezina Trophy level, but you've got a bunch of guys that have stepped up for this team. JJ Moser has been a revelation on the blue line for them, as has Darren Radish. Darren Radish took over for Hedman when Hedman was out on the power play, and Darren Radish suddenly turned into a power play savant from the point. Um, so they're getting contributions from up and down that lineup, and yeah, they're not going anywhere. They're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the conference. I would be a little surprised if they were not in the conference final.
Yeah, it would seem to be that they're on their way with all of that depth, all of that experience, because a lot of these guys have been through the wars for the Lightning the last 5 or 6 years. So they have that going for them. On the flip side, in the Western Conference, it's been kind of a strange ride for me watching the Blackhawks. And everybody expected Connor Bedard to do what Sidney Crosby did, to do what some other big names did. You're going to get there and you're going to flip a switch, and suddenly you're going to get back into contention. And that hasn't happened. And his development seems to have slowed at this point. Is there any thoughts out there among people watching the NHL that there's either something wrong with Bedard or something wrong with that situation in Chicago?
Yeah, I don't. I think like early in the season there, before he got hurt, Bedard was right there with Leo Carlson and Macklin Celebrini at the top of the NHL scoring. Then he got hurt. That knocked him off the Team Canada roster most likely. And since he's come back from the injury, it hasn't been quite as productive. Although I think there is something to be said for he was kind of a tweener in terms of being a center and a winger, and they just didn't. There's not. He hasn't been able to really find his footing as a center, which is what you ideally want with a franchise-changing piece like that. But on the other hand, look, the situation is just not very good. You have a guy like Crosby. Yeah, Crosby did turn it around, but he also had kind of been coming up at the same time guys like Evgeny Malkin, Marc-Andre Fleury. You had those types of guys, Chris Letang. Um, but yeah, Connor Bedard does not have that level of help with him, at least not right now. I think Frank Nazar has been promising. They have some promising guys, but they don't have anybody like Bedard who's down their footing at the NHL level who can really, really help him carry that load. So until they can develop some more, or maybe swing a trade for a high profile impact guy, it's tough to ask Bedard to do all this by himself.
Yeah, it seems that he is almost like a one-man show out there sometimes, and it has picked up. The same can be almost said in Edmonton with Connor McDavid having a lot of times he's had some help because he's got Leon Draisaitl with him, who is obviously probably a top 10 forward in the National Hockey League. So they've got a really good 1-2 punch, but they've never been able to develop the depth around it to make them, they've made it to the finals, but they haven't been able to get over the hump, mostly because of poor goaltending, but also because when push comes to shove, they can't get any scoring from lines 3 and 4.
Yeah, that's Edmonton has faced the same issues year over year. Now it's a lack of depth scoring and it's a lack of goaltending. Both have been bad. In terms of the depth scoring, you look at the deadline. I think overall the deadline Edmonton was pretty disappointing. I did like that they got Connor Murphy from the Blackhawks, but they also gave up a first-round pick just to shed Andrew Mangiapane's contract and get Jason Dickinson back, a bottom 6 guy, but you're not getting good value there for that first-round pick. And it's a same old story in Edmonton where I think, and I know they're kind of strapped as far as draft capital goes, but if you look around the league, look at what the Panthers do, look at what the Golden Knights do, look at what the Lightning do. They will move heaven and earth to get impact players because they know their window is now. They have to win now. Their stars are in their prime. They have to go after the cup right now. Edmonton has Connor McDavid on an incredibly team-friendly deal for a few more years. And then after that, who knows? So this is their window. This is their time to strike. And they were very passive at the trade deadline. They're pretty passive this past off season too. And I think that's pretty inexcusable for a team that has the best player in the world on an absolute bargain deal for what he's worth.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough when you've got that great deal. You should be able to use that extra capital to build something around them, and they've never been able to get that done. Is it bad contracts that they have from the past, or is it just a lack of vision, do you think, from the front office?
Well, I think there is a certain element of a lack of vision because yes, there are maybe a couple bad contracts in there. I think you look at Darnell Nurse is probably one of those, one of the more notable ones. But I mean, like I said, look at what these other teams, Vegas and Tampa, and even some other teams like the Avalanche Stars, they get out of bad contracts all the time. They find a trading partner, they attach some draft capital, they say, eat this contract, we'll give you whatever pick. And then they use those resources, they use the extra space to go get somebody else. And it just comes down to me, the roster building has been terrible. The solutions they've tried to find for this depth scoring problem, especially and in goal, have been brutal. It's been last year it was go get veteran Jeff Skinner and veteran Victor Arvidsson. Neither of them panned out. And then goaltending, you flip Stuart Skinner and Tristan Jarry. Tristan Jarry's been worse than Stuart Skinner was for you. So you're just swapping bad options for bad options, and there's no bold move that's a real upgrade at any point.
And meanwhile, you take an Arvidsson who didn't pan out in Edmonton, and he goes and he's helping the Bruins on their resurgence, a team that nobody really, and even I'm a Bruin fan, I did not expect this team to compete. I thought they would be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference at this point of the season.
No, I did too. I did not think they would have the scoring by any means to make the playoffs this year. But obviously, Morgan Geekie has been tremendous in that regard for the second straight year. And you're right, Victor Arvidsson has been red hot lately, and that's been a huge boost for them because they need depth scoring wherever they can find it. And then look, I mean, you guys like Pavel Zacha, Elias Lindholm, they're chipping in. So it's been kind of a by committee approach at times this year, with Pasternak being the constant, but it's worked out. And Jeremy Swayman's played well. That's the other factor. That's the other thing they need if they want a shot at the playoffs. So everything the Bruins have needed to go right for them so far this year has, and they're in position now to make the playoffs.
Austin Nivison, CBSSports.com, hockey writer, NHL writer. Thank you so much for the insight. We really appreciate it. Enjoy the stretch run. I'm sure we'll get together again right before the playoffs start and get your thoughts on how the playoffs are looking to shake out this year.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
We will be back. We're going to take a quick time out. We'll be back on the Sports IQ after a brief break.
Are you paying too much for term life insurance? There's a tremendous price war among the major term life companies. Rates have dropped dramatically in the past few years. For example, a man age 45 non-tobacco user, $1 million of coverage is only $75 per month, level for the next 10 years. Or a man age 50 non-tobacco user can buy $500,000 of coverage for a monthly premium of only $110. Guaranteed not to change for the next 20 years. That's right, level rates for 20 years. And if you're a smoker, we have great rates for you as well. At the Term Lifeline, we specialize in policies of $500,000 and above. So if you're looking for new or replacement term life insurance, call right now for a free quote.
Rates and availability may vary by state. Sample rate quotes are based on preferred non-tobacco underwriting exam required to qualify.
Call 855-826-7932. 855-826-7932. That's 855-826-7932.
Everything is expensive right now. Gas, food, you name it. You're spending more, you are making the same or less money. So, what do? You rack up credit card debt, that's what you do. It's not your fault. It's the economy. And guess what? If you rack up too much credit card debt like some of us, you can't pay your bills. Then the credit card companies, as nice as they are, start hounding you for money. Then you start your downward spiral. A smart thing for you to do is to call the Zero Debt. They can help you consolidate all your credit card bills into one affordable payment. Millions of people have done it. It works to make you debt-free. Make this free call right now. It costs you nothing to learn more.
800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. 800-507-7293. That's 800-507-7293.
You're listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
By the way, today is March 10th, and that means this is the day that if there is not a new collective bargaining agreement between the WNBA and its players union, they now risk the season being altered. Now, again, we've talked about the draft is about a month away. The start of the season coming up the second week of May. And so because it takes several weeks to ratify, and as the time that we're doing this right now, recording this, there is not a deal in place. They've had some other talks here over the weekend. But again, what's going to happen now with the WNBA in terms of the season starting on time? They try to, get that window, right? This is, created to squeeze in between, the NBA playoffs. And then, of course, start of the next season. We'll get these things done in September. But as of right now, there is no deal in the new CBA for the WNBA. We will see what happens. Today was the deadline. We'll see what happens there. By the way, story in Atlanta. There were plans to celebrate the popular strip club Magic City. Magic City. Well, those plans have been scrapped. The NBA stepped in and canceled the March 16th event. It was going to be taking place during a Hawks game against Orlando. The famous strip club is within walking distance of the Hawks Arena, State Farm Arena, known to be frequented by pro athletes and celebrities. Somebody who lived in Atlanta for 30 years. I can tell you I never set foot in Magic City. Know where it is. Drove by it on my way to work and back. But anyway, yeah, Atlanta Hawks. Why were you thinking it's a good idea? Why would you think that's really? Okay. Talk amongst yourselves. Hey, by the way, really quick, last night, say Gilgeous-Alexander, 35 points last night, career high 15 assists, OKC over Denver, 129-126. But Gilgeous-Alexander, 126 straight game with 20 points. That ties Wilt Chamberlain. Listen, that's a record for Wilt. We don't mind him tying. The other ones, you can leave alone. You know what I'm talking about. Off the court. Okay. All right. More conversation next on the Sports IQ.
I get a lot of calls from people across the country who are suffering from the affliction of IRS tax debt, and that's because I have a remedy. Hi, I'm the tax doctor, and if you're having any of these tax issues, call me right now. My team specializes in helping people over the age of 50 solve their tax problems, and the bigger your tax problem is, the more money you can save. If you owe the IRS money, or you're about to owe the IRS money, or even if you need to file years of unfiled returns, call us right now. Our friendly, highly trained representatives are waiting right now to take your call. Over the years, we've helped thousands of people just like you stop the tax liens, wage garnishments, and harassing phone calls. You don't need to send the IRS a big fat check. We can negotiate a lower amount. That's what we guarantee for you. So call us right now. Call 833-789-3068.
If I was your mother and you had a drug problem, I'd grab you by the ear and make you call and get help. You can be in treatment tomorrow and start to get clean in 7 days. Follow Mom's advice and call the Detox and Treatment Helpline now. Write this number down.
877-927-3380. 877-927-3380. That's 877-927-3380.
You're locked in to Sports IQ with Larry Smith.
Well, Larry, yep, we are right around the corner from the start of a new NFL year. And you know that usually signals the kickoff to absolute mayhem for the first couple weeks. Guys getting released, free agents signing, money moving here, there, everywhere. The combine is just wrapped up. So there's an awful lot to talk about. We're lucky enough to have Josh Buckhalter from Heavy.com join us. He's one of their NFL writers. Josh, thanks for taking some time and joining us on the show.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Let's talk a little bit about the combine and some of the winners, some of the losers, who did what. It was an interesting show. It always is down there in Indy. And, I think there were some folks who definitely increased the value of their stock, especially with some of the timings that they had. Who do you think really kind of increased and helped cement their place in the draft?
Well, the stories of the combine were obviously the speed numbers that you got from guys like Kenyon Sadiq, Mike Washington Jr. at running back. And then I think the Styles brothers really did themselves a big favor. Sonny Styles was already one of the top picks in this class, but his brother Lorenzo Styles Jr. really lit up the boards. Name recognition helps, but then going out there and showing your athleticism the way that he did should definitely help him a lot.
Yeah, those numbers really kind of jumped off the board to me as well, especially for Lorenzo, because he had been, he was at Notre Dame. He transferred to Ohio State, had found a position that kind of suited him on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see where he ends up in the draft. I thought it was kind of interesting, funny, and yet tragic at the same time when people were booing Carson Beck when he was throwing in Indianapolis just because Miami played, Indiana for the national title. How did Beck do as far as what you saw for his stock coming out this year?
Yeah, I think the body of work is really what you saw, right? That's kind of a kind of player that Carson Beck has been. So I'm not sure that any NFL team is going to get too wrapped up in what the fan sentiment is about. Miami's performances, and the third. Beck is a player that, when given time, can be accurate, can deliver passes in high leverage situations, has played in high leverage situations, and teams value that experience. And I think that his ability to show that he can still put the ball where he wants it to go is only going to solidify what teams already thought about him before this.
And it'll be an interesting draft. Last few years, we've seen multiple quarterbacks go in the opening round. We're pretty sure that Fernando Mendoza is going to go number 1 to the Raiders. That's kind of been a lock for a little while now. We'll have to see. Maybe the Raiders decide to trade out of that pick. Who knows if somebody overwhelms them with an offer. Do you think we're going to see more than one quarterback taken in the first round, or could this be a somewhat less of a quarterback year come draft day?
It certainly could. We are, though, in an era where teams talk themselves into quarterbacks, and so I do believe that we'll see Ty Simpson go sometime in the first round, probably in the back third of the first round. And if he slips to the second, I'd be really surprised, just because again, quarterback play, good quarterback play is at a premium in the NFL, and if the team believes that they can find a young player that can provide that for them, they will pull out all the stops to go and get him. And so Ty Simpson is another guy who didn't really hurt himself, if not help himself at the combine. And so I could see him sneaking into that back end of that first round, just because that position that he plays, teams need that. And as we look around the league every year, there's not as much good quarterback play as probably anyone would like.
And right now, we've seen now no deals are finalized until the new league starts, but we're hearing trades being agreed to, most of them involving either some form of lineman, edge, or wide receiver. Do you think we're going to see some more movement among those positions? I know there's some teams that are have got some cap issues that are trying to get under the cap by trading away some of this excess talent that they have.
Well, they say necessity is the mother of all invention. It's the same way with trades. It really will depend. I think the landscape will change a lot once we get into free agency and see who goes where. You always have that second wave of guys who become available after moves start taking place. And then when the draft rolls around, you'll see that same process take place again, where another wave of guys might become available just because teams have found ways to fill their roles with younger, more cost-controlled prospects and players. So it's difficult to say there'll be more. I do believe there'll be more, just because that would seem to be the nature of how this offseason is going. Teams are looking to rearrange their money. They didn't really shed salary in the NFL. They just kind of moved the deck chairs, and so I could see more deals for sure. I'm not sure if we'll see more with the edge and the market that we've seen so far get action, but I definitely think we'll see a lot more activity this offseason.
There's some people that are going to be out. We know that are going to be out there. Their agents, I'm sure, are working the phones already, trying to figure out where some of these guys are going to go. Players like Kyler Murray is going to be available. There's a few other players that have been informed that they're going to be cut come, the first of the year, as soon as they can be. You see any big movements happening with some of those guys? Anybody going to try to take a flyer on a Kyler Murray, things like that?
Definitely. Kyler Murray's a guy who's got talent, number one overall pick in the draft class. There were attitude questions, but talent level has been evident since he stepped onto the field. So I'm sure that he'll have plenty of suitors. I don't know if he'll step right into another starting opportunity, but he won't be out of work for long. Geno Smith out there by the Raiders is a guy who's found his way onto multiple rosters, resuscitated his career a couple of times. So we'll see if he's able to do that again. If you're a quarterback, you probably won't have difficulty. It gets more complicated with older players at other positions just because the returns start diminishing rather quickly. So those guys, though, quarterback play, I don't think Kyle will have any issues. I don't think Smith will have any issues. And then we'll see, again, like I said, case by case what happens with everybody else, just because of how the nature of the NFL is with players in different age brackets at different positions.
We've seen in the last few years how having extra cap money, being under the cap, while may hurt you one year and lead to a bad record, but if you've got cap money to spend and you spend wisely, you can make major improvements, like we saw with the New England Patriots, like we saw with the Chicago Bears this past year, like we saw with Denver over the last 2 years. These teams that had cap money to be able to go out and fill holes with quality players and bring them in at the right price. Who should we be watching for once free agency starts as far as taking that kind of approach to building their roster? Because it really is a change in approach, right? The last maybe 5 or 10 years, the draft obviously is a key cornerstone, but really if you've got plenty of money to spend, you can rebuild a roster quickly, probably quicker than with the draft, by going through free agency and adding the right pieces.
Yeah, and the key part of those things that you just mentioned was they all found a guy that they believe is their franchise quarterback. That allows you to be a lot more aggressive in other areas, especially while you try to maximize that rookie contract that they come into the league on. And then, so entering this offseason, I guess the thing that you would look for to follow that same formula will probably be the Raiders sitting there at the top of the draft, looking like it's going to be Fernando Mendoza. Once they get him secured, you just try to surround him with as much support as you possibly can, just so that he has as smooth of a runway, because it's going to be ups and downs. That's just the nature of the beast. But if you can support him with as much strong supporting cast experience, veterans that are going to help uplift him, that's how you want to build your success and get him going, so that when he has to carry the load, he's able to do that because he has that kind of that recall to call back on. Other teams that you can look at, Tennessee, they have their guy Cam Ward. I think I was kind of impressed with him last year, despite the circumstances. If they can put a strong system around him, I think that they can do make some noise as well. And then you kind of look around elsewhere, and it's not really easy to spot. Maybe the Arizona Cardinals, depending on what they do in this year's draft. But I think a lot of the other teams that are positioned to make splashes may already have their established quarterback, so it's kind of hard to put them in that same category as the Bears, the Patriots, or what the Broncos have done. However, I would put the Raiders up there, and then maybe I don't know if it's under the radar already, but I would say the Titans would be a team to keep an eye on, just because Cam Ward is a guy who showed leadership and an ability to stick it out, to step up in tough situations, and that's something that teams like to build around too.
And it was interesting to me watching free agency unfold last year and getting ready to watch this year's. Sometimes it's not the sexiest moves that bring you titles. The Patriots and Bears especially really invested their money in people in the trenches, on the front line, offense, defense, securing those areas while adding little pieces like the Patriots adding a Stephon Diggs, who they're going to release when the new year starts this year, but really kind of building through that trenches. It really has become a league where, yes, you need a quarterback, obviously, because it's a quarterback-driven league, but you have got to be solid in both offensive and defensive lines to make a difference when it comes to winning and losing football games.
Yeah, there's a joke that goes around that, for all the changes and advances that they make to help the offense and to make the game faster, you still need the big uglies down in the trenches to make anything happen for you, regardless. So the quarterback's no good if you can't protect them, and your defense is no good if you can't affect the quarterback. So the flashy players from the perimeter on in, they get the headlines. But like you said, man, you got to have those big guys down there to move some earth. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in neutral.
Yeah, and we've seen a number of teams kind of stuck in that area because they haven't been able to develop that line play on the offensive side and the defensive side. It's like you said, you've got to be able to affect the quarterback in the modern NFL. And that's the other interesting thing to me, Josh, is, we know that the NFL has become a pass-happy league. It's all about offense and putting numbers on the board. Yet if you look at the last two Super Bowl champions, it was defense that dominated and carried them to those titles.
And I'll take you a step further. I'll say it's pretty much the old school mentality of defense in the run game. Seattle leaned on Kenneth Walker in the Super Bowl. You mentioned the Bears a second ago. Their best offensive asset this year was their running attack. And I think that, especially with young quarterbacks, it's essential that you have a strong, solid running game to lean on, because there are going to be moments where they're not able to overcome that adversity. And you want to be able to help them. You want to take the burden off them that have to do that. And again, keep the defense honest. They're not able to load up on you one way or the other. And I think that that's always been a formula to success. The league tried to get away from that, like you said, with that pass-happy momentum, but teams adjusted to that. They put more defensive backs on the field. So now you have teams trying to adjust to that adjustment, going back with more heavy packages, 13 personnel, and leaning on that rushing attack, because that's what the game is dictating nowadays.
And this past offseason, Josh, boy, there was more coaching movement than we've seen recently, and some surprises when, Buffalo decided to let go of Sean McDermott. Baltimore decided to let go of John Harbaugh. Which one of these guys, who do you think is going to make the biggest difference from a coaching standpoint coming into this new year?
I would say Harbaugh, and maybe because of his track record, I think Harbaugh does a really good job of handling the CEO role that we often talk about with head coaching positions in the NFL, where they don't have the luxury of focusing too heavily on one particular aspect. He's a very good at seeing over everything in that regard. I do like Brady in Buffalo, but that's kind of a continuation. He's not really new, you know what I mean? So when you get Harbaugh going from the AFC to the NFC, going from a Lamar Jackson to a similar style with Jackson Dart, but still a different kind of player altogether, I think that's a situation where I could see the Giants having a significant turnaround from where they were this past season.
This year we also saw kind of a changing of the guard, almost, if you will. The young quarterbacks, May, Nix, Caleb Williams, leading their teams on deep playoff runs. Matt Stafford was the exception with the Rams, leading his Rams on a deep playoff run, being 37 years old. Do the old quarterbacks, will one of them be able to step forward and get their team back to the promised land, do you think, this year? Does Josh Allen finally break through? Does Lamar Jackson finally break through? Can Patrick Mahomes come back from that injury and help a retooled Kansas City get back to the top? And of the veteran quarterbacks, who do you think is best primed to make that next step move, if it's possible for them to, with the teams they have around them?
I did think this past year was kind of funny, just because you did have the down year from Mahomes. We didn't get to see the Joe Burrow that we all thought we were going to see and things of that nature. So I do wonder how those guys having a normal season will affect the landscape. I feel like you can never count out Mahomes and the Chiefs as long as you have him there. I do feel, though, that the Chiefs are the poster children, I guess, for what happens when you pay a quarterback that exorbitant salary. It gets way more difficult to put a competitive roster around him. And that's not to say that Mahomes or any other talented player shouldn't take as much as they can get. It's just you have to think about these kind of ramifications as well. I do think that a guy that could probably break through that I don't know if I'd waste any money on it, but I could see it happen. Let me just go that way. But that would be Justin Herbert with the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. I like what that setup has. I like Harbaugh's approach, and I like the toughness edge that he would bring to a team like that. And Herbert has all the talent in the world. He's a guy that seems maybe kind of like Josh Allen, sometimes has a tendency to get in his own way when he needs to do the opposite and uplift his team. If he can get that bugaboo out there, and that's a big one, but if he can overcome that, I think the Chargers could be a very dangerous team.
Well, we're going to leave it right there, Josh. That's a great note to end it on. Really appreciate you taking some time and talking with us, getting ready. League year begins on Wednesday. It's always fascinating to see who gets out the gate. The money is going to fly fast and furious just as soon as the doors are opened. It's like shopping on Black Friday. Once the doors are open, everybody get out of the way, right?
Absolutely. That opening bell. And remember, you got a tampering period on March 9th, so we'll see some noise before that happens.
Absolutely. Josh Buckhalter, he is the HeavySports.com, one of their NFL writers, always has some great insights, some great information. We appreciate you taking some time and talking to us. And we are going to take a quick time out, but we will be right back on the Sports IQ after a break.
Do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call. Because the best prices on airline tickets are not online. They're with SmartFares. See, SmartFares has special deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. They have access to great prices and discounts with over 500 different airlines, plus 300,000 hotels and rental car companies. Their prices are too low to publish online. The only way to learn more is make a free call. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to find the lowest price on your next trip. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents find the best prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next trip.
Fans of big sports radio and sports spectacular podcasts have a new home on the Chief Sports Network. Find your favorite programs and content all in one place by downloading the Chief Sports app in your mobile device. Created in South Carolina, the Chief Sports Network is the home of an expanding network of live and podcast format programming. It is also the home of one of the leading national college football podcasts, JC and Morgan, hosted by ESPN's Mike Morgan and 24/7 Sports' JC Sherbert. Download the Chief Sports app for free and find all of your favorite programming under one easy umbrella. Thanks to all of our markets for your loyal support of Big Sports Radio and our Sports Spectacular podcast, and we look forward to connecting with you anywhere in the world on the Chief Sports app.
Producer Tony joining us now. And Tony, great conversation there with Josh. But now we are here, and some of the deals we talked about already about Tua being gone from Miami, and then in his place, Malik Willis. Talk about hanging around. This is where quarterbacks listen. If you're a high draft pick, and he was only a third-round pick out of Tennessee, for the Tennessee Titans, out of Liberty, didn't work out for him there. He goes to Green Bay, reinvents himself, and gets a very sweet 3-year deal from Miami as their starting their QB1 for 2026.
Yeah, and made maybe 4 starts over the last 2 years, 4, maybe 5 starts.
Yeah,
and was able to parlay that into another big contract. Hopefully, it works out for him in Miami. Play like he did. Has the Green Bay backup. Transfer that over. It's a matter of learning, figuring stuff out. A lot of quarterbacks now. Look, Tua's deal now going to the Falcons on a 1-year.
How about that?
It's a make good contract. If he's good, then he can go out and get himself another big deal, possibly. And if he doesn't, the Falcons aren't out, but a couple $1 million. They have to have a backup anyway. Might just as well be him as anyone else. Maybe he can help Michael Penix come along. Who knows? But I mean, you're seeing a lot of different quarterback whose backups moving. The Bills signed a backup they had 2 years ago. Trubisky goes to another team to be the backup. Everybody gets shuffled around now in the NFL, and it's just a matter of where and when.
Well, and look, I mean, we've seen what's happened in Indianapolis with Daniel Jones on a deal for about $14 million and change. What he did in his 1-year deal. He's now the QB1. He gets healthy here for 2026. Who knows what might have happened if he hadn't been injured. Seattle, Sam Darnold, Super Bowl champion, on a reduced deal, if you will. A guy who was had resurrected himself in Minnesota the year before, and he goes all the way. Look, there's great value there. I mean, some of these teams are showing you don't have to shell out $50 million a year for a quarterback to get you to the promised land if you do it the right way.
Yeah, and hopefully one of the things that teams are taking note of, especially the Raiders, are you don't have to throw a quarterback into the fire the first time, because that may just derail what could become a pretty good career. Yeah. Look, the Chiefs didn't throw Mahomes to the Wolves the 4 year. They had Alex Smith, let him sit for a year, figured it out, because the pro game is so different from college. The speed, everything is so different. You cannot go into a pro game, going, I'm going to hit that receiver as soon as I see him come open. Yeah. No, you got to throw it to where he's going to be open once he gets open. And if you're not willing to do that, you're going to struggle.
Yeah.
But give them that year and a half, 2 years, whatever it is, to learn. Some guys have come in and done great as a first-round pick and, pick things up right away. But I think that's more the exception than the rule.
Yeah. Speaking of guys to throw to, Brock Purdy in San Francisco has a pretty good one. Mike Evans has just had a fantastic all-pro career in his, decade plus now, right, out of Texas A&M. They're in Tampa Bay. Looks like he's going to the Niners to team up with Purdy. I love this pickup.
Yeah, I mean, they did a great job giving him somebody that they can rely on, count on. Look, the wide receiver room in San Francisco has been a mess because of injuries, because of other things. They just haven't been able to have the same people on the field. Mike Evans has always been pretty durable. Yeah, he had some injury woes this past year, but you can probably count on him for 14 to 16 starts over the course of this year. I think they've done a good job. I thought the Raiders had an excellent first day. They've rebuilt part of that roster. Yeah, if you've got $100 million, sitting in your pocket, you might as well go out and spend it, right? Once they got that going, everything seemed, to kind of pick up from the Raiders' standpoint. We'll see what else they do here in the offseason. One team I'm disappointed with, I've Larry always been a Packer fan. I think Brian Gutekunst is having a terrible start to free agency. They overpaid for Sean Rahan, bringing him back when the Lions signed a center for $8 million less, a center who had an all-pro in his bank that Rahan doesn't have. There's 3 centers came off the board today we're making less money than what the Packers paid Sean Rahan. They lost a couple of people. I thought the trade with Dallas was horrible. Yes, they had to move on from Rashawn Gary, but you got nothing for him. You take a look at what the Parsons deal looks like now. It looks like that Dallas got White. They got Kenny Clark in the middle. They got Rashawn Gary on the outside, 2 first-round picks for Michael Parsons, and a 4th-round pick.
Yeah.
Man, It's not a good start for Brian Gutekunst.
No, it's not. Quick thoughts from you on Kansas City. Looks like the Travis Kelce signing for 1 year, and the Chiefs bringing in Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker III at running back, reportedly a 3-year deal worth $45 million. Nice pickup for Kansas City.
Yeah, that's something, Patrick Mahomes has not had a reliable running game the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
They've been trying to do patchwork. They tried Isaiah Pacheco. That didn't really work out. They've tried other guys back there. It just hasn't come together for them. Hopefully getting somebody like Walker that they can count on, that can be a bell cow back, will help Mahomes whenever he gets back from his injury and give them something to come on. The one thing now is that the Kansas City Chiefs are not going to be drafting with that number 9 pick, Jeremiah Love, which has been speculated all over everybody's pre-draft boards that they would take Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. Maybe they think and have heard Love is going to go higher and he wouldn't be there at 9. Who knows? But you can put those issues to rest, because the Chiefs, at their cap room, cannot afford a first-round pick and Walker in
Right.
the backfield. That's too much money to spend at one position.
Right, exactly. Well, the season is just beginning.
But
let the checks
that's
fly.
the thing, right? Why do we even have 2 days of legal tampering? Just start the year on
do it.
Monday. Just
Yeah.
say the year's open. Here we go. Hit the ground running.
Exactly.
Oh no, we're going to give you 2 days of legal tampering, and then the year starts.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
is
exactly. Because
that?
it creates more buzz, more headlines. Come on. All right. Producer Tony, appreciate it. Our moment of Oz up next.
Listen, were you forced into getting a solar contract and now you just don't want it anymore? Maybe the solar company misled you. Or is your solar contract buried with hidden fees? Are you not saving the amount of money you thought you would on your energy costs? Don't worry. At the Solar Exit Hotline, we can help you cancel your solar contract, even if the panels are already installed. Our experienced legal team will review your contract and help you cancel it, possibly saving you thousands of dollars. You got to call right now for complete details. So listen, if you're not happy with your solar contract for any reason, we are here to help you cancel it. Call the Solar Exit Hotline now for immediate options to help you exit your solar contract. This call is 100% free.
Call 855-227-0286. That's 855-227-0286. Call us right now.
Okay, time now for a moment of awe. And it was on this day back in 1963 when a kid made his Major League spring training debut in Tampa. He got a couple of hits in his first 2 at-bats. The team was the Cincinnati Reds, and that player was Pete Rose, who would go on to become, of course, baseball's all-time hit king and one of the most popular and also one of the more controversial players of our generation. Pete Rose making his spring training debut on this day in 1963. A moment of awe. 2 hits and 2 at-bats. Who knew what was to come? That's our moment of awe. That's our show for today. Thanks so much to our guest stopping by, Austin Nivison of CBS Sports, also Josh Buckhalter as well, talking a little NFL. We appreciate you being here as well. Make this a great Tuesday. We'll talk to you tomorrow here on the Sports IQ.
Thanks for listening to Sports IQ with Larry Smith, Monday through Friday. Continue the conversation at Sports IQ LS. We'll see you next time.